found these nightstands on Marketplace. They're a little dated and kind of beat up, but nothing we can't fix. There's a decent amount of damage on the top. Looks like water damage and then just scratches and whatnot. I'm pretty sure this is solid wood. Like you can see this crack going from the top. Underneath looks like solid wood here, and see this texture? It's like MDF. Particle board situation for the bottom of the drawer. Really cute little poles. I love these. I think I'm gonna keep them. So first things first, with any project, you want to start out with a degreasing cleaner to prevent any grime from messing up adhesion of any products you're going to use. And also, if you're going to be sanding, you don't want to sand any of that into the wood. This is one of the good reasons to clean before you start going with tools and stuff. This part is veneer. So if I were sanding this part, this would be good info to make sure that I wasn't like really heavy with the sander going in. For whatever reason, these are in here. So before I get to any more steps, what I know I don't want on these dressers are these big old thick bases. It's just not the look I'm going for. What I'm thinking I might do is play off the rounded curves of these handles and do an arched sort of base and just cut right into the wood that's already there because it's good strong wood already. Can't put any back on once you take it off. I'm doing too much drawing on the face without knowing exactly what I want to do, and I think I'm going to do really skinny and high arch. I'm just going to make a template. Putting it at 3 3/4 height. And I don't know how to do this other than to eyeball it. I'm sure there's some great way, but I don't know it. No. Well, hope this is the right choice. This is the one I'm settling on. So I decided to just cut off that whole top piece because where it was pushing up and down is creating irregularities in the measurements. But I don't really need that piece because I can just do how far in and how far up so that I can make straight lines that way, and then I can just use this for the template on both sides. Sometimes I get lazy and I don't want to bother with this step, but putting tape down first before cutting the wood helps with decreasing splintering. I'm first getting the sides drawn in and then just connecting the middle point, which works for both the long and short sides of the nightstand. Then I double check all my measurements because, as I was muttering to myself before, you can't put any back on once you cut it off. I put a brand new little blade on this jigsaw before I started, but it still was a very slow process, and my jigsaw kept losing power. I think I might be in the market for a new jigsaw. I was checking out the Ryobi jigsaws at Lowe's the other day. Have any of you guys ever tried that one? Flipped it over just to get a look at it, and I feel like that already makes it so much better, just way less clunky. Okay, all 6 done. That took off a good amount of weight, which is going to be kind of nice. Now they're finally ready to go outside to get a good scuff sand. It's important to rough up that shine so the primer sticks better, and it's also important to get down all of those uneven, damaged areas with some heavier sanding as well. So with this damage on the top, I need to make sure this is all really even. I can't just do a scuff sand, so I'm gonna get out my sander. I have these 80 grit. You don't necessarily have to have all that low, but these are the ones I have. This is a mesh sanding disc. I talk about them all the time in my videos. They don't create buildup. They work a lot faster. They're more durable, and you don't get the little spiral things as much as you do with regular sanding discs, and partially because they don't get buildup on them. So I can link those down below. They're my favorite. I keep on going back and forth with staining certain parts of the dresser or not. staying the base and leaving the rest, or staying the top and leaving this painted, or the drawer and the top, or the drawer and the base. But sometimes less is more with a project, and sometimes when you do too much of pieces here and there, it starts looking DIY, if you know what I mean. Instead of like an expensive furniture store, it looks like, hey, look what I did. Sometimes that's good, and sometimes it's not so great. So you guys can tell me at the end where you think this one fell. Brought it back inside for some repairs. I love using these little syringes to get into tiny little spots. I started noticing outside while I was sanding that these spindles are still moving. So I decided I better glue them down so that after all the paint and primer is down, that when they move, it won't crack the paint. And then while I was doing that, I found a little area that I needed to repair. Now that some prep is done on the first one, I need to bring the other outside and get to work on that. I often check after sanding with my hand to see if the surface is nice and flush, because some things you can't tell very well with your eyes. Now this next bit is repairing this corner that I accidentally busted, but I'm pretty sure this is the footage I accidentally got. I love when I do that. But what I was meaning to show you was me fixing this corner with a 2-part wood epoxy called Quick Wood. It's kind of like a Play-Doh, has 2 components. When you mix them together, it chemically hardens. There's more of a gap here than I want, so I figured I probably should check the screws and see how tight they were. And underneath, these 2 were spun out. They didn't have any more to grip to with the particle board inside there. After everything is done, I'm going to tape off some areas to get ready for primer. This is frog tape. It's the best kind of tape to make sure that your paint lines are really nice and crisp and have no bleed through. After that, I make sure I use a microfiber rag to wipe off any debris that the vacuum didn't get to make sure there's no barrier between the primer. You can get Zinsser bin shellac primer at Home Depot or Lowe's. It's about $30 for a quart, which is a little spendy, but a little goes a long way. Or you can get the spray can version, but it's almost the same price and only goes about a quart as far as the quart does. Or if you're doing many projects, you can get the gallon, which is a bit pricier. You really are paying for quality here though, because it's the best primer I've ever used. It has great adhesion, stain blocking, odor blocking. It blocks wood tannins and blocks moisture, which is especially important if you're working on particle board furniture, which swells with moisture. And it also creates an even coat on all the different materials which are on the furniture, like wood filler, so that it makes sure that it has the same sheen once you get to the painting stage. It's pretty easy to apply. You just need to make sure that you don't have too much on your roller or your brush because it's quite drippy. And then when you go over your rows, just make sure the peak that is from the edge of the roller, that you roll over that quickly so it flattens it down a bit. You can get this tinted to be a gray if you're doing a darker paint, but a benefit of the white is that it will show every little thing that you've missed, any dents or anything that you might want to fill in. The more time you spend on an area, because this dries so fast, it will start creating more texture if you get too finicky. This can't be cleaned up with water though. It needs to be cleaned with ammonia or denatured alcohol. I learned that the hard way when I was using a spray gun with it years ago. So now I just use a cheap roller and a cheap brush to throw it away when I'm done. Remember to clean up any mess that goes over the edges or any drips before they dry. I do want to put some white paint under this fridge to make the stain underneath not visible anymore. I've already put some frog tape up in there, so this is really easy to apply a quick layer of primer there. That frog tape's gonna keep a nice clean line once I take it off. I just don't want this stained underneath to be visible from the paint that I'm gonna be doing, so. Now, before I move on to the second layer of primer, I need to go around and fill in any dents I find. Just a slight ridge there. I use Bondo glazing putty for small repairs. It dries fast and sands very easily, which makes for quicker work. I'm glad I wound up picking up that second container of primer. I wanted to show you again, it's so thick at first. Down at the bottom, the shellac separates very quickly, but once you mix them back together again, it's very thin and runny. It's totally normal for this type of primer, but there actually is a synthetic version of this primer that's water-based, so you can put it in a spray gun more easily, and it has water cleanup. I've heard that it's thicker consistency than this. You guys will see me use this air purifier throughout the video. I've used it for years, and it's really handy because it has the light indicator, blue for clean air, then it goes green, orange, and red for really bad air. Keeps cleaning up the air till it makes it all the way back to blue again. I feel like it's a must-have for indoor projects like here in my dining room. I'll have it linked down below in the description if you're interested. I kept filling a ridge here. Chances are it is going to show. I sanded it back down. So I'm going to try some 2-part wood filler. It has the activator here, and when you combine them, it chemically hardens. I typically like using this one, this Minwax one, when I'm doing a raw wood look, because typical Bondo has a blue hardener, and that's just more work to do like blending sticks over blue hardener than it is to use this tan hardener. This is what I had upstairs at the moment, so I'm using it on this anyway, even though I'm painting it. Finally ready for paint, I picked out this beautiful color Black Bamboo by Behr. I forgot I also need a brush to go around like the spindles and in those little edges. Both these are zebra brushes. Obviously this one's well loved. All zebra brushes that I've ever tried are wonderful, so I'd recommend them for any hand painting. Now you don't want to overwork paint, because once it starts setting and drying, if you keep going over it, you start agitating it and it creates more texture. Make sure the area is nice and covered first, and then to aid a little bit and making sure there's no peaks or anything, I go over after very, very lightly. This also helps pop any little bubbles that might be sitting there too, and makes those ridges lay down a little bit. Be curious to see how this roller does compared to a foam roller. That's pretty textured. I shall see, and maybe I will move back to the foam roller because I'm not so sure about that. I'm gonna clean up the edges here before they dry. If I have a light touch, then I won't have as much cleanup over the edge. Lay it on there and then I'll clean it up afterwards. And it collapse down. Again, some pressure initially, then finish off with a light touch to help the texture go down. It's gonna look cruddy on the first layer. That's just, it's unavoidable, pretty much. I wanted to show you the top here now that it's mostly dry to the touch. It did a pretty good job at self-leveling despite the texture of this roller. I think I do like my high density foam rollers better, but still it's pretty decent. I'm gonna show you the initial texture right here compared to the other roller. You can already see that it's laying flatter. Brush it this way so that it doesn't squish over the edge. You can tape it off if you want, however works for you. It's time for a quick scuff sand between paint layers. I'm using 320 grit for this, and then a quick wipe down with the microfiber rag before I lay on the second coat. I was getting debris in this paint over and over again, so it started drying up and causing that texture you see there. So I have to get that later and sand it down again. Because the top was having some texture issues and there was also still a little bit of light showing through on this paint, I did go in with a third layer, which may not be the case for you, but for this project it was. I was also needing to touch up that area that had that crack, and so I put a little patch of paint there to get it ready for that third coat. And this time I decided to mist the surface so that the paint had more dry time to move on smoothly. You can also use Floetrol, but I couldn't find my container of that, so this did work really well and turned out very nice and smooth. There's still at least half the container left, and I did 3 coats. Sometimes in transit, clients get little dings here and there. So I like to make a little container for them just in case that happens. I put the color of the paint and my little card, and then it's good to go. I don't know about you guys, but this part is so satisfying, so I had to give this a little grandstand. And off comes the tape here underneath, and you can see from the front it looks really nice. I'm going to use my walnut gel stain. It's a really good versatile brown. And a great thing about using a gel stain, it makes a more even finish than the liquid oil or water-based ones. And this I'm pretty sure is maple, which is notorious for being splotchy when it stains, so a gel stain will be perfect for that. I started out using the little paintbrush and then just moved on to the regular chip brush because it worked fine. If you're wondering why I didn't tape over the paint, I had just finished the last layer this same day, so I wanted to be gentle with it. I need to show you guys this accident just because it's good to know. This is the area that I sanded those holes down with the wood filler, and I was using a different grit than the rest of this. So this wood is like sealed up here and it's not taking the stain. So now I need to have all of this sand with the same and restain it. I wasn't really happy with the tone, so I decided I needed to go in with a second layer of stain to deepen the color. I was happy with how that turned out, and so I moved on to the last step, and that is putting on a wipe-on poly. This is the easiest type of poly application really ever. You just wipe it on, that's it. You can use this little brush and then wipe back excess, or you can just use a rag or a sock or some sort of cloth and wipe it on directly. It really is just that easy. And at this point of the project, I remembered that there is still hardware. So I boiled these with vinegar water first, then used Barkeeper's Friend paste to scrub them up. They turned into a bit of a silver color and I wanted more of a gold or brass, so I put them on this cardboard and sprayed them with some brass spray paint. Here's the first layer down here, and then the second, and this is much better. And then I just put them in, and that's a wrap for this project. So let's take a quick look back where we started. These weren't terrible. They were pretty dated and a little damaged and just needed some alterations, a few repairs, and a fresh coat of paint. And now they're so sleek. They have that mid-century modern vibe. I love the moody green with the rich walnut stain. And it was so beautiful the different tones the green gave depending on the different lighting. At the end of every project, when the busy work is done, I get to sit down and I look at my view and it feels so peaceful. I love this part. Thank you guys so much for your support, and I read every comment down below, and you guys really are amazing, so kind. If you haven't already, please remember to hit that subscribe and click the bell notifications for alerts when I post, and I will see you in the next video.